National Police Commissioner Fannie Masemola is overseeing the destruction of drugs worth at least 400 million rand. It's part of efforts to clamp down on the drug trade in the country. Let's take you live to Zola Sholwana, who has some of those details for us. And Zola, we heard the police commissioner earlier talking about the fact that this consignment of drugs is linked to several high-profile cases. Tell us how the morning has unfolded there.
Well, Michelle, as we speak, there is a destruction of drugs where we are, and this is somewhere in the Gauteng province. Unfortunately, we were not able to capture that moment due to safety concerns and also the protection of the establishment that we are in. But we do understand that the drugs that are currently being destroyed are drugs that have been taken by SAPS through various operations across the country. We heard him highlight that provinces such as the Gauteng province have become the hub in terms of, transporting drugs. In fact, that's what he said in a briefing. Let's take a listen at that bite.
Drugs is a problem for the whole of the country, not necessarily that only KwaZulu-Natal. The destination mostly is Gauteng for drugs, while they come via land ports. They also come via our international airports, and to an extent, majority also come through the seaports, which all our harbors in this country. So, and get processed in different places, but Gauteng seems to be the hub. Even those of KZN, they all end up in Gauteng and processed and then redistributed. So not necessarily that KwaZulu-Natal is the capital, no. Even Western Cape, there's a lot of drugs that come via the sea through Western Cape, processed and then distributed to the country.
Well, Michelle, from what the commissioner is saying, so most of these drugs, according to his statement, are or get into the Gauteng province through ports of entry such as the OR Tambo International Airport, and of course others get here by road. And he has also mentioned that the fact that Gauteng is slowly or has become a hub for drugs doesn't mean that other provinces such as the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal are not included in terms of the statistics of drug busts that have happened. We know that last year there was a huge drug bust in a harbour in Durban. We know that here in the Gauteng province, in the West Rand, not so long ago, there was a drug bust that was done by police where we saw a manufacturing lab of certain drugs such as cocaine and Mendrex. So he did highlight that most of these drugs that are found on the streets are your cocaine and Mendrex, just to mention a few, and also continuing to urge communities to play their part, especially in their respective communities, because some of these drug busts are done in areas or residential areas where there's mostly firms, where one would think that there is a firm of a particular product, and it wouldn't be the building wouldn't be branded, only to find out that there's some illegal activity that is happening there. So people are urged to continue playing their part. He has also highlighted on major successes that have been done by the SAPS through their high-density operations such as Operation Chanela, the arrests that have been made so far, and also how they continue to deal with the scourge of gender-based violence, considering the fact that we are in the month of August. So we know that that process is a process, the one that's happening, which is the destruction of the drugs, is a process that takes, quite long, because there's drugs that are worth over 400 million rands, according to what we are being told by SAPS. But of course, we haven't really gotten, the names of these kind of drugs, but we know that cocaine and Mendrex were the drugs that were mentioned. We know that this is an operation that usually happens at least once a year. So after the collection of these drugs, we know that they get to be stored and then they get to be destroyed at this point. But police are continuing fighting drugs, because we know that there are crimes, especially in the Western Cape, where we understand that drugs are a great contributor to, certain crimes that we know about, your gender-based violence and also contact crimes.
Yeah, I heard the commissioner noting a few, he called them victories for the police and proof that the police are hard at work to try and clamp down on particular types of crime. He says in just the past 7 days, over 17,000 suspects have been arrested. From the 1st of April this year, over 300,000 suspects arrested for crimes ranging from murder to rape to assault, GBH. But of course, as impressive as these numbers are, Zola, the one thing that we know is that arrests mean nothing without prosecution.
Well, yes, indeed. And that is the greatest challenge, Michelle, because we often get these updates from the SAPS on a quarterly basis on the arrests that they have made. But communities out there are still living in fear, meaning that these arrests don't really mean much because some of these people, their cases do not go further. In fact, they go back to communities and, their victims are found living in fear. And this really contributes to the mistrust that is now between communities and the SAPS, because you'd understand that through operations or imbizos that are usually held by the SAPS engaging with community members, you'd realize that some community members are afraid to come forward and report, such incidents or cases to the police because they fear that they will report these cases and these people will be arrested, and in a few days they are back into terrorizing communities. But we know that there's a huge backlog in South Africa, really, when it comes to, the courts also and how they attend to matters. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and he has acknowledged that, the SAPS still has a long way in terms of addressing those issues so that the faith that the community needs to have on the men and women in blue is finally restored.